Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 7 of Tour de France 2022. It's Planche de Belleville today. Now, this is an exciting finish at just about 7 kilometers long with sections at the finish of 24% on gravel roads. This climb never disappoints. Every time I've done this climb, it's always been an exciting finish, and it's because it's normally the first climb of the Tour de France that will finish and summit that can have some GC selection. Now, the years when I've done it, it was Chris Froome with Sky that won, and it was a showdown at the beginning of this climb where Sky just went in there and drilled it. I was fighting halfway up the climb trying to stay with Andreas Kloden, who's having an off day, and I had to drop back, stay with him, and pace him all the way to the finish. We did damage control on this finish on that particular year in 2012, but we didn't have to go all the way up the gravel summit. Now, today, it's going to be an exciting race. We know we got riders on form. Question mark Primoz Roglic, whether or not if he's got good form. But yesterday, he had a strong finish on stage 6 of the Tour de France. When the racing starts, UAE team members have all kinds of drama because even before the racing starts, in the neutral section, it's Tadej Pogacar that has bike issues. Looks like he's got some kind of a saddle problem as he pulls over to the side of the road with the UAE team car director there trying to figure out what the problem is. They get him going, but let me remind you, this is a short neutral section. That was happening with only about 2 kilometers to go, and then he's back on his bike and getting back up to the back of the peloton. It won't take much longer before it's George Bennett, UAE Team Emirates. He's got bike problems too. This is looking like a nightmare start for the first summit finish here at the Tour de France for UAE Team Emirates. When I was sitting there at Peacock and we were filming, we had heard stories of UAE Team Emirates having both cars after George Bennett back there changing bikes. Now, they're still going to have another problem. It's going to come in the form of Marc Soler. Soler looks like he's furious as he's got bike problems for the third person here on UAE Team Emirates. Up front again, the pace is flying. From kilometer 0, it was going full stop, and it's Bora Hansgrohe that were throwing in attacks left and right. Niels Pollet with Max Schachmann on his wheel. They were digging hard trying to get Bora Hansgrohe in the front breakaway here. Let me remind you guys, they got 3 guys on general classification. Vlasov is high up in the top 10. Bora Hansgrohe have 2 other riders though, and it's Max Schachmann 2 minutes back, and then they got Leonard Kamna that's 3 minutes back. So they got a bit of a threat here for the yellow jersey if they can get riders up the road. And with UAE Team Emirates having so much problems back there, you gotta believe with Bora Hansgrohe attacking left and right every time there's a UAE Team Emirates rider off the back, that there's a good chance they can get away. With 40 kilometers of non-stop race and almost identical to yesterday's start, it's going to be Simon Gesink who gets up the road for Cofidis. The Cofidis riders digging hard. Then when we look at the picture back in the peloton, it's Filippo Ganna back there, Ineos rider. He is still in the peloton, and we'll see him launch out from the front of the peloton past the group of 4 or 5 riders. He's not going to wait for any of them, and then he's going to bridge straight up to Gesink. This was a mammoth move right here from Filippo Ganna. He's clearly riding better here on stage 7, Planche de Belleville. Those 2 riders will start working pretty well together, and then all of a sudden, Filippo Ganna will give a pat on the back there to Gesink and tell him see you later as he sits up and goes back to the peloton. At this point in time, there's always a reason when a big rider like Filippo Ganna will pull himself out of the break. This isn't the same scenario as yesterday's Wout van Aert. This is a little bit different, if not completely different, really, because Filippo Ganna, when he's going back to the group, didn't make much sense because there's still a lot of attacking in the group back there, so it wasn't evident that it was just going to be a 2-man break all the way to the line. With Filippo Ganna sitting up and going back, Simon Gesink's on his own again, pulling hard. Now there's going to be a huge breakaway of rider that splits off from the field up there, and we're talking about 8-9 riders up there, and it's Bora Hansgrohe, Leonard Kamna, and of course Max Schachmann, 2 minutes back on the general classification. Those guys are pulling hard at the front, and Casper Asgreen from Quick Steps up there, he's drilling it. Mads Pedersen from Trek Segafredo, Ciccone, who was the yellow jersey wearer in 2019 when this stage finished at Planche de Belleville, he's in there. Bahrain victorious Dylan Teuns is represented, and he won this stage in 2019 when Ciccone took the race leader's yellow jersey. It was Ciccone that Teuns had to beat on that stage. Now that group will bridge up quickly to the lone rider up front of Simon Gesking, and now that group starts working well together. There's 11 riders total, and they got one guy tagging on, UAE Team Emirates, Vegard Stakolegan, who's in there, and he's sitting last wheel, disrupting everything. The Movistar rider in here, Emmanuel Ivetti, he looks like he's not doing a ton of work, and I see him a couple times sitting on the back with two riders sitting on. The chemistry is not working that fantastic up there, but it's 11 guys. Casper Asgreen wants this to work. Trek Segafredo, they're riding through, and of course Bora Hansgrohe doing everything they can. Now let's back the film up and go back to the Peloton, because back there at the Peloton, everyone was staying calm. They took this period, backed off the pedals a little bit, and then we'll just see Marc Soler riding on the front while everybody's getting bottles, foods, taking nature breaks, and coming back to the Peloton. Now when everyone gets back up to the Peloton, we'll see UAE Team Emirates hop on the front, but the time gap up to those 11 riders is still not very big. At this point in time, when I'm sitting in the studios watching the UAE Team Emirates rider Vegard sitting up there on the back of the group up there, I'm thinking, Vegard, you got to drop out of this break. This makes absolutely no sense to have a UAE Team Emirates rider that's good for the flat section. The early first half of this race is basically flat before we start the first of 2 KOMs, and then of course when we start Planche de Belfi. So what do UAE Team Emirates finally do? After Soler's worked on the front for about 30 kilometers, they're going to pull Vegard out of the group there. He's going to stop off at his team car. He's going to fill up with bottles. And then he's going to drop back to the UAE Team Emirates led Peloton. Now we'll see him start handing bottles to all his teammates. And then there's a close call. Didn't look that close when you saw it originally, but there's a bottle that falls down off of one of the riders, UAE Team Emirates riders, and it's Tadej Pogacar that just misses the bottle. He didn't look like he had any problems and just kept on rolling. This is a pretty normal thing right here for bike racers, but it can cause some accidents. But we're so used to seeing bottles in front of us that, of course, when you're talking Tadej Pogacar who could handle his bike, it had no effect on him, and the bottle just rolled off to the left side of the road. Now, UAE Team Emirates have all 8 riders back there, and of course, Vegard now is starting to do some work on the front with about 90 kilometers to go. Now, with him pulling and Mikkel Bjerg pulling, you got 2 riders from UAE Team Emirates, and the gap really only gets up to about 2 minutes at this point in time. You can tell in the Peloton when you look at the back, they're not going slow, but they're not going all out 100% because the Peloton's still pretty big and it's a little wide in the back, which tells me that they're not full gas. Every time when we look at the front of the Peloton, it's 6, 7, 8 riders from UAE Team Emirates up there at different times throughout this chase here. But when I'm sitting at the studios, I'm thinking, UAE Team Emirates, you really don't have to do any big work here, and they're doing solid work, but not just selling out 100%. Up front, we'll see with Bora Hansgrohe just over 70 kilometers to go. That's when Bora Hansgrohe start attacking. Leonard Kamna, Max Schachmann throwing a big attack. Luke Dubridge from Bike Exchange, he's following quickly. Now behind, where there's a little bit of chaos and some gaps are opening up because Bora Hansgrohe, no, they need more time. When you look at the clock at just about 2 minutes, it's not enough time with 70 kilometers to go, and UAE Team Emirates only riding 2 riders back there. Bora Hansgrohe's throwing down hard. We're going to see Simon Gesking, the rider who started this breakaway a long time ago, and he's bridging across up to the 3 riders in front. Dylan Toombs will bridge across. With that group of 5 up there, they're starting to finally put some time on the UAE Team Emirates that's still riding the front steady in the back. Now, they'll go over the top of the KOM where Simon Gesking took maximum points. When they drop down the backside, it'll take about 20 kilometers before 2 of the original group of riders that got dropped will find their way back up. Emmanuel Ivetti and Cyril Barth from B&B Hotels, with that group that was 5 now becoming 7. They're working a little bit better, but you know they got to be tired if 2 of the riders already got dropped. Over the second KOM, again, Simon Gesking could take maximum points here on stage 7. They'll drop down the backside, and when we're going with film all the way back to the front of the Peloton, things are starting to get exciting. When we go up the second KOM, it's UAE Team Emirates that's still riding the front, but we're starting to see the Peloton suffer a little bit when we look at the back of the field. As we come in with 20 kilometers to go, is when we start seeing Vegard coming off the back. Next rider to come off, Mikkel Bjerg for UAE Team Emirates, and that's followed up by Mark Hirschi. Don't worry though, UAE team members still got everything under control because it's Marc Soler up on the front pulling hard here at the Tour de France. Let me remind you guys, Marc Soler had bike problems at the beginning of today's stage, and then he rode 20-30 kilometers on the front after this big break went away before Pogacar came back to start helping for UAE team members. Marc Soler is doing a solid job up there, and then with about 15 kilometers to go, this is when we start seeing everything getting really nervous, and it's going curve to curve back there. Jumbo-Visma starting to come to the front, Ineos is starting to come to the front, and then just after 15 kilometers to go, Ineos actually start taking over the front here on stage 7 of the Tour de France. Let me remind you guys, once Ineos is on the front, that means UAE team members got a free ride. Filippo Ganna, who went originally in this break with Simon Gesking and then was pulled out, this was the reason for that. They got a plan with Team Ineos and they start drilling it into Planche de Belfi. Up front with the breakaway, Bora Hansgrohe's Max Schachmann got on the front before Planche de Belfi started proper and was drilling it because the time gap was coming down to about 35 seconds. Max Schachmann's getting worried. He's trying to help Leonard Kamna win here on Planche de Belfi. He'll do a big pull, and then once the climb starts, it's going to be Leonard Kamna that starts pulling. He's got a little bit of help from Dylan Teuns, and then it's going to be Simon Gesink when we get into the start here at Planche de Belfi for Cofidis that throws in the first attack. Simon Gesink knows he can't have the time gap come down anymore to the peloton being led now by Ineos and Filippo Ganna. Full gas. Guys, this is a mistake right here, and I'll get into more details after today's stage finish on exactly why, but Filippo Ganna's going full gas. Simon Gesink's got a gap. There, behind Simon Gesink, Dylan Teuns is pulling as hard as he can. He wants to win this stage again. He's got good memories from 2019, and then Leonard Kamna lights him up and goes across the gap quickly up to Simon Gesink. And when Leonard Kamna gets there, he just sits on the Cofidis rider's wheel because we're coming up to the first flat spot here on Planche de Belfi. He'll sit on Simon Gesink's wheel to try to get some recovery, and as soon as the hill starts to go up again proper, when we get into the meat of this climb, we're going to see Leonard Kamna, Bora Hansgrohe light things up as he drops Simon Gesink and sends him back to the peloton of GC favorites. Now behind us, Ineos Filippo Ganna led in the Planche de Belfi with all his GC favorites on his wheel. This is a big no-no because it's going to be UAE team members that got a free ride. As UAE team Emirates Brandon McNulty takes over at the front, his teammates start lining up behind him, and it's George Bennett there, Rafael Majka, and Tadej Pogacar. Brandon McNulty, we saw the excellent job he did with 1.5 kilometers to go in yesterday's stage 6, and now he's repeating that feat. He's on there. He's doing a brilliant job. I want to point one thing out that when we turn around and look at yesterday's stage, it was Brandon McNulty who did the finish of that climb because it was a short, not a super steep climb. Now you look at Planche de Belfi, UAE Team Emirates have flipped up the chemistry. They got Brandon McNulty pulling first here on Planche de Belfi, followed quickly by George Bennett after about 2-3 kilometers. When George Bennett gets on the front, he starts drilling it, and the gap from Brandon McNulty's work on the front is dropping all the way down to a minute, with George Bennett trying to bring back race leader Leonard Kamna up the road now, who's solo driving as hard as he can. When we see the 2 kilometers to go, it's Leonard Kamna, and he's got about a 45-second gap on the peloton of favorites back there, being led by UAE team members. With 2.5 kilometers to go, George Bennett's done his last pull for Tadej Pogacar. Now let me show you the damage he did, because when we back the film up at 3.5, it was Vlasov, Alexander Vlasov for Bora Hansgrohe that came out the back here of the GC favorites. Up front, Leonard Kamna's trying to win this stage, while his GC favorite here has gotten dropped. Next rider, second on general classification, Nielsen Palace, is suffering big time. He'll find his way just barely back onto the back end of the GC favorites as Rafael Majka starts taking his pull for Tadej Pogacar. Now Tadej Pogacar needs a big performance here from Rafael Majka if they're going to catch Leonard Kamna, who's up the road. With 800 meters to go, the road goes hard left, and now we start getting into the dust for Leonard Kamna. He's still got a gap here and still a chance to win Planche de Belfi. Leonard Kamna's digging as hard as he can. When we go back to the GC favorites, though, with just over 1 kilometer to go, it's Rafael Majka gritting his teeth, trying to find every ounce of power left for Tadej Pogacar. Behind Tadej Pogacar, it's Ineos, Geraint Thomas, Adam Yates there. Then it's Romain Bardet, DSM, who's having a marvelous day here on Planche de Belfi, followed by Jumbo-Visma's Primoz Roglic and Jonas Vingegaard. Tadej Pogacar's locked on the Rafael Majka's wheel, and just as they pass 1 kilometer to go with about 900 meters, Rafael Majka's going to swing off, look back, and wave Tadej Pogacar through. Now let's go back up to the front rider because it's Bora Hansgrohe's Leonard Kamna, who's still got a chance here to win Planche de Belfi. He's digging hard. It's 350 meters to go, and he's looking back. Oh no, Leonard Kamna, don't look back. Just look forward and push as hard as you possibly can, because at 800 meters, after Rafael Majka pulled off and the road went left, Tadej Pogacar went to work. He did a massive acceleration, gapped both Ineos, Adam Yates, and Geraint Thomas off. But Jonas Vingegaard, you are looking spectacular. You came from about 6 spots back, closed the gap up to Tadej Pogacar. Primoz Roglic locked in on Jonas Vingegaard's wheel, and then Geraint Thomas finds a second win here and locks in behind the Jumbo-Visma train. Tadej Pogacar now starting to go to work, but we don't know the gap up to Leonard Kamna because the clicker had turned off. Leonard Kamna now with 150 meters to go. He can start smelling the finish line here at the Tour de France, but when we look back at 200 meters to go, it's Jonas Vingegaard throwing in an attack on Tadej Pogacar with 200 meters to go. He gets an instant gap on Tadej Pogacar, who, let me remind you, has already been pulling for 600 meters here on Planche de Belfi, with Leonard Kamna throwing in hard. The camera comes back, and it's 150 meters just under. As we start to see Jonas Vingegaard coming into the picture, it's gonna be a battle all the way to the line. Tadej Pogacar's digging deep, trying to close the gap up to Jonas, as Jonas is starting to close up on Leonard Kamna at 75 meters to go. They pass Leonard Kamna, but Tadej Pogacar still hasn't closed the gap. He sees Jonas look back, and he knows now he's got a chance. Tadej Pogacar does one more big acceleration, and at 25 meters, the two are side by side. At 10 meters to go, Tadej Pogacar's got the lead, and when he crosses the finish line, he doesn't even have to throw the bike, because in 10 meters, he opened up the gap to Jonas Vingegaard, who finished just behind Tadej Pogacar on the stage, but no bike throw was needed. When we look at Jonas Vingegaard, as soon as he crosses the line, his foot has to come out of the pedal so he doesn't fall over here on Planche de Belfi. Now, Primoz Roglic did a solid job and rounded out the podium here at Planche de Belfi, and Leonard Kamna crossed the line for 4th. An excellent showing here from Bora Hansgrohe, trying to put pressure on race leader Tadej Pogacar, but UAE team members were magnificent on today's Planche de Belfi. Now, when we dissect the stage here for Tadej Pogacar and for Jonas Vingegaard, the big mistake, the one I can really point out, is at 200 meters to go, when Jonas attacked Tadej Pogacar, you can't do it. At that point in time, Jonas, you got to just go everything in for the stage win. So whenever you attack, you know when you attack Tadej Pogacar, you have to attack when you can go full gas all the way to the line and not hesitate. And we saw just at about 50 meters to go that it was Jonas's legs that were starting to fall off. He started to lose power, and then Tadej Pogacar caught the Jumbo-Visma rider right at about 25 meters to go. They're side by side, and then just accelerated all the way to the line to win a magnificent Planche de Belfi, a back-to-back stage victory here at the Tour de France for UAE team members Tadej Pogacar, and defended the race leader's yellow jersey. Now, when we look at tomorrow's stage 8 here at the Tour de France, I think we're going to see pretty much the same MO as we did today, except for the break should be able to stay off. So there's going to be attacks throughout all of the stage tomorrow, probably deep in until we start climbing up on tomorrow's stage 8, until the break gets away. I didn't care much for the tactics of Ineos pulling for 15 kilometers to go all the way into Planche de Belfi and giving the UAE Team Emirates riders a rest. When you're going up here, Planche de Belfi, the slower you go, the better it is for everyone else whose name isn't Tadej Pogacar. Now, Jonas Vingegaard, when we're talking about going further at the Tour de France, remember, this was the first mountain stage. This kid's a $130 probably at the most. So the first week here at the Tour de France had to be hard on the Jumbo-Visma rider. Expect him to get better and better as we get into the bigger and longer mountain stages here at the Tour de France. So we got a great battle still between Tadej Pogacar and Jonas Vingegaard, and we still got 4 Ineos riders in the top 10 here at the Tour de France. Primoz Roglic is looking solid. Luckily, the crash at the cobblestone stage here at stage 5 of Tour de France hasn't had a dramatic effect at this moment for Primoz Roglic other than losing a bunch of time. So if Tadej Pogacar has any problems on any of these mountain stages, you know Primoz Roglic is going to go straight to the front and start drilling it and put Tadej Pogacar into some problems. If they have any bike problems like we saw here on stage 7 of the Tour de France, if he has a bike problem for UAE Team Emirates at any of these crucial moments, it might be the blow that Jumbo-Visma are looking for here at the Tour de France with a shot at winning general classification with Jonas Vingegaard. So UAE Team Emirates, you better get your bike situation under control. Your tactics were perfect today, with the exception of leaving Vingegaard in the break for a little bit too long. Other than that, you still pulled him back. But if that bike situation isn't fixed, Tadej Pogacar could lose the Tour de France here in 2022. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition real soon.